Stephen Hawking once said, AI is likely to be either the best or worst thing to happen to humanity. Keep this in mind as we discuss today with our returning guest the challenges the United States will be facing in the domain of the artificial intelligence. My name is Dr. David Oualaalou.
And my name is Dr. Ross Stewart.
And you are watching Geopolitics in Conflict.
We are delighted to have a return guest. We had a number of requests, so we want to hear more from this man, and he graciously accepted. Richard Turrin. He's an award-winning executive with more than 20 years' experience in finance and technology innovation. After a long career at IBM, both in Singapore and China, he currently is an independent fintech and AI consulting, helping clients navigate the uncharted waters associated with the latest cognitive technologies. Richard is also a speaker and author of many books, including his international best-selling book, Innovation Lab Excellence, and his new book, Cashless China, Digital Currency Revolution. Richard resides in Shanghai and has been there for almost 20 years. Richard, it's really a pleasure to see you again.
David and Ross, it's my pleasure to be here, and a heartwarming hello to your entire audience. I'm honored that they requested me back, and I had such wonderful interactions with so many who wrote to me on either Twitter or LinkedIn. I was really surprised. You've got a great following.
We're remarkably pleased with the quality of the people who view this show and the feedback they give us.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, it's one thing to do these shows, and I do a fair amount of podcasts because of my books. But what I love is that when the audiences are really active and they write to you and they disagree or they agree, but they let you know how they're feeling, and that's really a testament to the work that you both have done on your channel.
Well, indeed. So our viewers is going to be in for a treat today. So we truly, truly appreciate you taking the time, Richard. So just to give our viewers sort of a layout of what we're going to be discussing in this conversation here, we're going to be addressing the artificial intelligence, we're going to be addressing social media, and we're going to be addressing the financial aspects of which is your background. So I'd like to start with one of the key information that just came out recently, the last week or so. It has to do with the resignation of the first software chief of the Pentagon, Nicholas Shailen, over China's artificial intelligence dominance. His argument was that the U.S. is like, and I quote, is the cybersecurity systems pertaining to AI and so forth is at kindergarten level, end of quote. What do you make of that, Richard, given your knowledge and background?
Yeah, Shailen is right. Look, Shailen basically came out with a statement that was highly controversial, but he's right. And he basically said, China, the game is over. China won the AI race. Now, the race that most people think about is the one that makes the newspaper. And that's the one that says, who has the smartest artificial intelligence? Is it the US? Is it China? Whose AI is smarter? And I'm going to agree with Mr. Shailen to say that the race is over, but it's not quite the same race. Let me explain. Shailen is talking about the race where he says, well, AI in China is more advanced. AI in China is as smart. I'm going to talk a little bit about a different AI race. And the race is not over whose computer is smarter, which is really, who cares? It's an academic issue. The real issue is which society is implementing artificial intelligence. It's not who cares if you've got a smart AI if you don't use it. So you know, AI may be smarter in the United States today, but the reality is China is far more advanced in the most important measure, which is the implementation of AI, meaning using AI in society to make your life better. Really simple.
And this is where I kind of tried to read between the lines regarding his. I read the resignation letter, and I was trying to read between the line. What is he? Sort of where is he going with this? And I came to the conclusion, and this is my own opinion, and I am no tech-savvy guy. I understand the basics, but what I understood from that is that the fundamentals for understanding AI, the US is not investing in that, while China did a couple of years ago. Rather than spending so much money on weapons, for example, on whatever else, they figured, hey, we better create the foundation. And that foundation will be, for example, STEM graduates, the science, math, technology, engineering, and technology, all this. So my understanding was, Richard, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that the US did not invest enough in ensuring.
Yeah, look, absolutely. Look, there is nothing complicated about this. I mean, understanding artificial intelligence, how to code it, make it work is one thing. But artificial intelligence is a tool, is a product, is a service. You know, you pump money into the development of it, you get something out. You put money into your universities to get the graduates, you get the next generation of AI. All right. So what is China so special? And, you know, the reality is China is, and I'm looking for a stat here, forgive me, China now graduates 7 times the number of science, technology, engineering, and math, STEM graduates. 7 times the number of STEM graduates as the US. They're doing 1 million a year, and 3 times as many STEM doctorates. So what you have in China right now is an assembly line. It's a government push to say, look, we need computer coders, we need mathematicians, we need AI people, get them out there. Now, this is not unique. Now, I'm old enough, and I don't think either of you are old enough to remember the space race. And when I was a young student, the young math and science people were all encouraged to become engineers in the 60s in the US. And I became an engineer, unsurprisingly. But that concept of a government program, a government emphasis to increase science and technology graduates isn't new. The United States invented it, or at least mastered it in the 60s, and China is doing that now. What does this mean for AI? Well, there's 1 million STEM graduates coming out of China right now every year. Not every one of them is an Einstein, but a few will be. And that's the next generation of AI. And they have this ability to produce just tremendous amounts of sharp graduates who are going to go to work. And, you know, you put all those brains on it, and it's a problem that you'll eventually crack and solve. And, you know, you don't have to be an AI genius to figure that out. This is just basic government program where you put the emphasis on your society.
Well, I do remember, Richard, just to follow up on this before I'll turn it over to Ross to address the issues of the social media stuff. I do remember one of your postings that I read about when you quoted David Goldman. And the idea of, for example, and I'm going to quote here, that all of this is happening now in China and at scale. The linked, China, these are self-consoling illusions of a lazy elite that has allowed America's manufacturing, technological, and education advantages to erode over the past 20 years. An elite that has nothing to say about reversing the decline. End of quote. What do you
Yeah, that is just a tremendous quote. And yeah, you know, I don't know what to say about it because it makes me so sad. And the truth is, we in the United States are subject to the whims of an elite who have allowed this technological erosion to occur. And while we focused on wars in Afghanistan, while we focused our efforts in the Middle East, and while we pursued other issues that seemed to be important to us as a society at the time, we let slip perhaps one of the more important things, which is technology, and with it AI and everything else that comes with it. And as a graduate, look, as a child who grew up in the space race, I grew up thinking that science and technology was the cure to everything. Clearly, that's not true wholly, but that was how I thought about my planet. But somehow we lost that, and we lost that ability to keep our science and technology programs going at a very, very high level. And now I'm going to diverge a little bit here, but I would blame a lot of that, interestingly enough, on corporate R&D spending as well. And that's who we owe to Jack Welch, for the former chairman of GE, the head of GE, who got everybody on quarterly reporting, short-termism versus long-term. And if there's anything that the Chinese are really good at, that nobody beats them on, it's thinking long-term. So all of these things matter, and that's a wonderful quote. I really appreciate your using it.
Well, I couldn't agree more, Richard, regarding how we think in short term versus long term. I mean, look no further how our policies are moving forward, or even in education. You got policymakers making decisions on education. They have no clue about education, and yet making decisions on that. That I found very frustrating. So,
I'm going to quote you, Richard.
Sure, go ahead.
China is the best implementer of technology on the planet. Would you give us some concrete examples of that and talk more about it?
Yeah, let's talk about that. And I almost feel bad because I don't think my first answer out of the box was the best one, in the sense that I don't think it was as clear as it should have been. There is an AI race, and the commonly measured AI race is who has the smartest AI. I submit that that's not a race worth winning. I mean, it's important, yes, to have smart AI is very good, right? Not arguing that. The real race is to see which society can implement artificial intelligence and put it to work for its citizens. So when you come, you guys, you're going to come to Shanghai eventually. The COVID's going to end, and you'll be here, and we'll all have fun. We'll go around. But if you go to the subway in New York City, right? It's an antique. It's a great old subway. It works. Needs a lot of refurb, but the trains are set by a schedule. Every 2 to 3 minutes on certain lines during rush hour, and every 10 minutes. If you go to the Shanghai subway, the train departures are 6 minutes and 30 seconds and 7 minutes and 20 seconds, and they're not regular, and you're wondering why. It's because, as an example, AI is used to route the subway or put the departure times up for the subway train. So when obviously there's more trains during rush hour than during the middle of the day, but that isn't determined by a fixed schedule, 2 minutes and 10 minutes. It's all clocked in with AI, and they determine the departure times for the train throughout the day, depending on use and where the volumes are coming in. So that's part of AI used in smart city, and it's here and it's real. And that's just a fun but practical. You don't see it, you don't even know it's happening behind the background, but that's AI making city life better for Shanghai's 27 million people.
Wow.
Yeah. One of the things that you've talked about is the fourth industrial revolution. What do you think of that?
We're in it. We're using it. We're talking between China and the U.S. So yeah, look, we're in this digital world, and China is well situated, better situated than the US right now to
Mhm.
succeed. Why? China is implementing artificial intelligence. China is hard at work putting Internet of Things to work in an industrial setting for warehousing. And I'll give you an example in a second. China is ahead on 5G. And then, of course, finally, I can't help resist because this comes back to my book, but China is, of course, ahead with digital money. And why do all these things go together? Because we're looking at a future where machines are going to pay for things. Machines are going to have contracts attached to them. Machines will be the implementers and the tools that we use to digitize and live and work in a digital society. So let me give you an example, for example, of IoT that's at work. Mm-hmm. So anytime I buy anything on Alibaba, the Amazon of China, I can basically, and Amazon, to their credit, has this to a certain degree, but I can, of course, click on a link to show me a little map where my package is by the minute. And that package isn't just by the truck, which is all right. Everybody, Amazon can do that, but that's actually when the guy is on his delivery scooter delivering the package to my house. I can see it all the way from when it leaves the factory or the store that I bought it from, when it goes through the truck, when it gets on various scooters, and each one of them is logged in and out. So I have this Internet of Things. I know where things are. I know what they're doing. So someday I won't pay, not now, but someday I may not actually even pay for something until that item is delivered at my doorstep, and then my wallet will automatically pay. How will it pay? Oh, it'll log on. It'll be automatically logged on with 5G. What will it pay? Oh, it will pay with digital currency. All of these are the tools of this digital world, and a lot of them really go into the warehousing and to the industrial production. And tied to industrial production are loans and finances, for trade finance. So this is the future that China is already rolling out and building. And I sadly don't really see the U.S. making all of these moves. And it makes me sad. What can I say?
Yeah, well, that's where the word of innovation comes in. I mean, they are innovating, and usually when you sort of address those kind of issues, Richard, we would become labeled as, well, no. We are talking negative about America. No, we are the mouthpiece for China. We are it's nonsense, because we are exposing the reality for what it is.
David, look, I couldn't agree with you more. And if there's anybody who's tuning in, who's not maybe perhaps one of your regular viewers, look, it's not about whether I love America or don't love China, whether I'm a communist, I'm a not communist. These are really observations I try to focus on observations in the tech scene in China. Believe me? Well, okay, look at the statistics for 5G rollout. Number one country in the planet, nobody else even comes close with the number of 5G base stations that are rolled out in China. Not even nobody else. I think it was something like 500, very close to 1 million of them. I think it was 900,000 they rolled out. But the point is, all of the things that I try to focus on when I talk about technology are simple things that you can actually go to Google, find the sources for. So, it's not that I don't love the United States. I grew up in the United States. Sure I do. But if somebody doesn't ring the bell and say that the technology, that you are not winning this technology game, that you are being overtaken, that these technologies are critical for a digital future, if somebody doesn't ring that alarm, then I feel that I wouldn't be doing my job. I mean, I do this stuff. I write about China, and I do much of what I wrote. God's honest truth. I wrote my book, Cashless, because I felt that the financial system in the United States was so digitally backwards, with people still writing checks. We have a small business in the family. We write a lot of checks. I felt that it was so backward that it was dangerous. And that actually, to some degree, inspired me to write my book, Cashless, to try to get the West to understand what tremendous technology was at work in China for digital payment.
Yeah. Well, this is a great example for the idea of the innovations, Ross, as far as you look no further than the hypersonic.
Oh, really?
That China just tested. I mean, I am sure there's AI involved in that kind of stuff. I mean, to the point that it took the U.S. by surprise. Even the Pentagon wasn't aware of that.
Yeah, the Pentagon appears to be shocked by it.
Well, it's just because they realize how far behind they are in this technology of the hypersonic.
Yeah.
And China is using the AI part of that.
Let me ask Richard a clarifying question.
Sure.
We were in China 3 years ago, and we used cash, but everyone else used their phone. And we going, what's going on here? And we were ignorant. We made up our own theories about why that was happening. And then we found out what was really happening. How far has it progressed into 3 years? Are people still using cash at all?
No. I mean, look, if you go to the major, in fact, forgive me, but that's the best question because it's the best advertising for my book ever. Thank you so much, Ross. But, the title of the book is Cashless, and it really speaks to my life. I mean, we haven't had cash in our pockets here for years, meaning probably 4 or 5 years. We haven't been walking around with cash. I, as a habit, had a couple of folded up banknotes for years in my front pocket. But then I stopped bothering even carrying those anymore. I just don't even bother. So look, we've all got a cashless society here, thanks to 2 private companies, Alipay and WeChat Pay. And when foreigners came before COVID, in fact, my business partners, I would have to pay for everything with them, and then they would pay me back in cash. To which I, because they couldn't use WeChat and Alipay.
Yeah. A
problem that was resolved just before COVID. They actually allowed foreigners to put foreign credit cards in Alipay and WeChat Pay. I digress, but still. But yeah, everybody is cashless here. But, the point that you're making, David, you were asking a little bit about hypersonic. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, that's technology that I know nothing about. But the real point is that the U.S. underestimates China's innovation skills and technical skills. And that's really common. There were articles written in the Harvard Business Review in 2014. It's one of my favorites. I use it on PowerPoints. Mm-hmm. And it says, why China can't innovate. That was an honest Harvard Business Review article in 2014. And many are still thinking, oh, China copies, it doesn't innovate. Mm-hmm. Oh. And, these innovations, whether they're going cashless and not using paper money anymore, or the innovations for AI, what you really hear in the West is dismissive. We've got that. It's no big deal. Oh, we've got AI. Ours is smarter. We've got Apple Pay and Google Pay. That's as good. And, the reality is many of these technological innovations for China are adding up. Yeah. So don't be so fast to dismiss these innovations, and do not underestimate China's technological capabilities, as the Pentagon and Washington seem to have done.
Well, they're realizing that one, because the hypersonic test truly threw them off curve, because they realized they don't have anything compatible with that. And what the capability is based on, it's a little domain that I know a little bit about, of what they will be capable of doing with something like that. will be far beyond what the US has ever imagined. So this is why we are noticing, and I've just digged into some release prices from the Pentagon regarding the amount of money now they're going to be putting into that sector. So we all know where this is going anyway. So that's
we really think they need another $1 billion tank.
yeah. So
yeah, that's classic, right? We're always fighting. We're always fighting yesterday's war. The innovations are. I can't speak to a lot about war technology, but
yeah,
when it comes to innovation, we're always perfecting yesterday's tools.
sure.
When we really need tomorrow's, and that's
Exactly.
what do you say? That's not new.
I was reading one of your articles, and I actually found myself shocked. And I said, "This shouldn't shock me," but it did.
How did I get you, Ross? Let me have it, please.
In the article, you were talking about the number of technology people trading information legitimately back and forth between the United States and China, and how that was helping things go forward. And somehow they put it all of a sudden it became treason or something.
Wow.
Did I interpret the article correctly?
No, you got it right. And this is a real problem. When we talk about US's technological edge, if you talk to almost anybody about it, you'll hear people say, well, America is a great country because we have immigrants who come here. They want to live the American dream, and we attract the world's best and brightest to our university. Well, some of those world's best and brightest are Chinese, without question. In fact, the majority of most STEM programs programs, I should say, all have large percentages of Chinese nationals who are working in math, computer coding, or whatever. And there's something called the China Initiative that was passed during the Trump administration. At face, it's problematic. What it does is it says we are going to investigate ethnic Chinese people as being spies for China. Now, let's break this down. It's a little bit more nuanced than what I may have just said. Basically, it is true that there are people who come from China and go to school in the United States and leak technology back to China. That's a fact. I'm not debating that. And the United States has existing spycraft laws that are well honed and have been around for a very long time. Mm-hmm. Under the Trump administration, they passed this China Initiative. And what it did was it set the FBI out to investigate ethnically Chinese academicians and graduate students. And it has an absolutely terrible percentage of the amount of people that it actually finds and tries and finds guilty in court. But what it's managed to do in the interim is to scare the living daylights out of every ethnically Chinese professor in the United States. So much so that 42% of Chinese scientists actually feel racially profiled by the US government right now in academia. And the result is some of them are simply saying, we're going home. We're going back to China. We're not welcome here. So at a time when we need AI, when we need technology, when we need greater technological advancements, we're actually targeting an ethnic group of people for persecution. And that's a terrible thing. And that's not, and lots has been written about this. And I think it's a very, very important and underreported topic.
Wow, that's really, really interesting. So before we move into the social media conversation, I'd like to just point out one more thing, Richard. And this one has to do with one of our viewers. You know, we got very, very interesting viewers that they are very well informed. And he sent an info regarding China's fastest programmable quantum computers. Have you heard any of something like that?
Yeah, look, I'm not a quantum expert, but I know what I read, and quantum computing is the next big thing. And what I've read about this is so mind blowing that it's just going to be fun. All right. So
Wow.
basically, the new quantum computers in China are supposedly 60,000 times faster than that of Google, which has a quantum computer called Sycamore. So, all right. So China's computers are faster. So what does this matter and what does this mean? I'm going to read something that I found that was just hilarious, and I hope you see the humor in this as well.
Sure.
So, these quantum computers are fast on a scale that it's hard to comprehend. And the quote is this: "This quantum-based or light-based machine takes 1 millisecond to perform a task that would take a conventional computer 30 trillion years." Now, I understand that I'm sure there's a ton of caveats that go behind that, but still, it's such a fun statistic that you can't help but laugh at that one, right? So, look, quantum computing is the next big thing because everything that we have in terms of security is based on based on solving complex mathematical equations. And it basically says the encryption that we have on the internet, the encryption that you use for your bank account, for your password and things like this. It's all based on saying, I have a mathematical algorithm that you can't solve, and that's what makes this safe. If I were to take a computer and try to crack this password, it would take 20 years or some very, very long amount of time. And what quantum computing fundamentally does is it takes all of our existing systems and says, oh, you think they're secure? Not anymore.
Yeah.
So, it's a real breakthrough in speed, obviously, for design of stuff. There's a lot of different uses, obviously, but the one that I focus on is, of course, computer security because I work in the digital sector. So if you think your bank passwords and everything are safe, wait till the quantum computers come along and they can do that 30 trillion year calculation in 1 millisecond.
A millisecond.
Yeah. Well, the one I came across, by the way, just to piggyback on this, Richard, the one I came across because I went ahead and researched it I always do this. I gotta find out the information and see the counter argument to it and figure to make sure. But what I found was this, and I quote: "The series of quantum computers developed by Chinese scientists also include the Zhuheng 2. I hope I pronounce it correctly.
I'd have to see it.
Yeah. Which can compute calculations at least 100 trillion times faster than Google Sycamore." So you were right within what you said, basically. I was just curious,
big, right?
I was just curious about this because when one of our viewers sent this, and I was like, sure, we will address it with our next guest. And I didn't want to say the name because we keep it a surprise for them. So.
Look, this is a really important topic. It all goes together. AI, quantum computing, all of this technology that is making our next revolution.
Mm-hmm.
There's a very clear trend line going that we should all be able to see at this point, and that is that when it comes to technology, China's no pushover, and they're fighting back on virtually every area. They are improving, and they look at technology and they say, technology is our future. How do we master technology so that we can master our future? And that's what they're all about right now.
And that goes back to your point earlier, Richard, about long term.
Absolutely. So,
yeah. How about if we move to next one?
Sure.
Social media.
Well, these things are all kind of related
Yeah.
in terms of, well, China. I was just reading, and it might have been one of your articles about privacy in the social media and China's
Sure.
laws on this. And if you would go ahead and comment, I don't want to steal the thunder here, but what you said.
Yeah, sure. Look, China, of course, has had a tremendous crackdown on the internet, costing trillions of dollars off stock market valuation. And I think we all know about this.
Yeah.
We know that stuff is happening with regard to technology in China. But there are specific laws that China has passed. And my take is that these laws are very advanced, very important, and that the US would do well to observe and to not dismiss China's 3 big new computer laws. And they are as follows. Number 1, Personal Information Protection Law, often called PIPL, PIPL, okay? That's the first law. And what this does, it says that your data on the internet has to be private. Not a lot bad about that, right? Mm-hmm. And it governs how companies share information. And the second is a data security law, which basically says data for China has to stay in China. Now, that's not new either. When Trump wanted the TikTok ban, he said, we don't want American user data being exported to Singapore, because Singapore is where TikTok has its servers that it handles US data with. And the third one, which is important, is a draft law on algorithms, which is the AI and the machines that are behind the internet that decide what advertisement you're going to get, that decide what Facebook thing you're going to see. And those are the 3 big laws. And my thesis, and I'm happy to try to defend it if you don't like it, but I think you do, is that these are really important laws for the internet. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that they help define the relationship between people, society, and big tech, and that this is a problem that all countries in the world right now are facing, and that China is in the lead, and that the US should be observing. I'm not saying copying all the laws, but I am saying they should be aware and not to be dismissive of China's advances.
Yeah, exactly. Well, because given the problems we had with Facebook here, the privacy stuff, and
it's outrageous.
You know, that's how they end up Facebook making $80 billion a year out of the information of its users that it gets to be shared with the corporations without their consent. So, you know, but yeah, go ahead, Russ.
Absolutely. Look, Facebook. There's a really funny part of the story that I have to get into with you guys.
Sure.
Back in September, when these laws were proposed and had not come into passing, mm-hmm. the immediate reaction from the Western press was shocking. You know, the laws were horrible. Times actually went further than anybody else by calling these laws a blueprint for digital dictatorship in China. Which, you know, I ran a piece on LinkedIn about this article because I said, you guys are nuts. But the funny thing is, though, is that from the time when that article ran in late August, early September, till today, and of course, post-Facebook, many of the articles that you read today, including and nonetheless the Wall Street Journal, are saying, hey, these laws are putting China ahead of the United States, and we have to look at them. And we should all be, so it's really this funny thing. And then you add into this flammable mixture Facebook with the whistleblower saying, oh, yeah, Facebook knows that in order to get more clicks, which means more ad revenue, they have to show you socially divisive things because that makes you mad and it makes you click more. So, it's really funny because you had China's nuts then you had Facebook come out, and then you had the people reporting, gee, maybe China isn't so crazy after all, and we should take a look at these laws. And I've been saying that since they first came out. But I think they are important. And I hope that these laws are able to make a better relationship between people and society and big tech. And we all have that problem. Everybody's looking at what is the role of big tech in society. You know, in the United States right now, big tech is your censor. It's basically telling you what you can or cannot see. You know, and I know people are going to say, well, it's not as bad in China, and that would be truthful. I don't argue that. We have the Great Firewall here. But at the same token, you know, we have government-sponsored censorship of what we can and cannot see on the normal internet here in China. But you guys have corporate-sponsored censorship. You know, did you vote for corporates to censor what you can and cannot see? You know, I mean, this is a real fundamental question about, you know, what society does and how it handles these things.
How does this jive with the reputation of the surveillance state?
It's interesting because so there's two parts of surveillance. Okay, one is the surveillance of video cameras out on the street. Let's separate that one and put it out there. But when it comes to digital surveillance for the government, it does nothing. This is China, and digital surveillance exists, and it existed before these laws, and the laws leave it virtually unchanged for government. But what the laws do is they stop corporate surveillance. China's big techs are extremely aggressive at data capture. They are like vacuum cleaners, sucking up as much data as possible. And, you know, many people refer to China's internet as the Wild West. Those Wild West days are over. China now has some of the strictest data privacy rules in the planet. And basically, they cannot take your data without you knowing it. You have to approve it. And if you approve it, fine, they can have your data. And you'll be able to set data priorities. But the concept that corporates are going to surveil you without you knowing it, and big tech will surveil you, those days are over. A big net positive for China on that. And I know this is going to make people write. Go ahead, please write. It's all right. Ready? What we're looking at with China as these laws come online with big tech will make the data protection of China regard to the digital platforms like WeChat and Alibaba, you know, and it will make, or TikTok, or the Chinese version of TikTok, it will make the data protections far better than those that you have with Facebook, Google, and others. And that's the reality. This is a frontier, and another area in technology where China is aggressively going out and trying to take the lead because they saw the fundamental societal problems that China was having with big tech.
Wow, that's really interesting.
What about stepping into Bitcoin?
Yeah. Well, hold on, Sam,
Sure.
because we need to. There's one key other points that I'd like to address pertaining to what Richard just was talking about, and it has to do with China passing a law regarding limiting the time for children to play video games. You know. Yeah. Look, yeah. Go ahead, Richard.
Yeah, it's a great example. Look, I understand. That's a wonderful example of how China sees. Look, the Chinese government sees its role as making better citizens, making a better society. And there is no question that role for government does not exist in the US. I understand that. So you're not going to see, and nor am I telling people that the US should have, you know, limits on video games for kids like China does. That's a uniquely Chinese thing. We could laugh at it or not, but I'm not suggesting that those sorts of societal issues that are moralistic in nature be tackled by U.S. regulators. So I'm just talking about algorithms and basic stuff that the nuts and bolts of the internet need to be fixed. But by the way, that law turned out to have been tremendously popular with parents. It's a riot. I'm sorry, but
nice.
parents thought it was great because they got the kids off the games. But what do you say?
You're right. So,
by the way, the kids fought back.
Oh yeah. Oh, shocking. Yeah.
So, all right. So kids can't play the video games, but what they can do is they can watch videos of experts playing the game so that they learn from experts how to be better when they do have their 1 hour for 40 minutes on it. So, government says no on one hand, the kids do something else in the other. That's on kids are uncontrollable. Nothing you can do about it.
Yeah, that just gives you the idea about how centralized government.
When we were in China, we had the opportunity to speak to a number of young people, that is in their early 20s, whose English was astonishingly good. And what they said is, yeah, the government makes all these rules and we always find a way around it. We do what we want. I go on.
Interesting.
To say I was shocked at what I found in China does not tell the story.
Yeah.
Positively impressed.
Yeah, there's more nuance. People think about China in sort of black and white, binary, 0-1 terms.
Yeah.
And they particularly think of the Chinese government as this all-controlling entity that when it says jump, everybody, 1.4 billion people jump. And the reality is that when you live here for a while, you realize that the government says to do stuff and a major part of the population just does what it wants to do. So it's kind of like herding cats. It's really hard to get people focused on stuff here. So there's a lot of nuance there. And yes, I meet tremendous numbers of young people. When I worked for IBM, we had a completely bilingual staff. They were great, students of English who, spoke very fluently. They watched a lot of US movies. And it's when people come to China, as you have, they often have that experience where they say, gee, this is not what I thought. This is different. And the internet plays by that rules as well. People talk about internet blocking and internet censorship of speech. You'd be surprised the stuff that people say on the internet, provided that they are very delicate with how they get stuff out. So people are find a way to be heard, and that's impossible to shut down.
I made a real faux pas. I met a new Mandarin teacher.
Sure.
And I asked her, have you been to China? She looked at me with a shocked look and said, I'm from China. Her accent was, I don't need to tell you, it was so good. I couldn't tell. It's really funny because I can give you the same story, and I did the same thing. So it's not just you. She left now, but I had a yoga teacher, and she had such a California accent. It was so perfect that I walked up to her and I said, well, where did you study in California, or where did you learn yoga, or who was your teacher or whatever? And she looks at me and she says, I've never been to California. I'm from Beijing or Shanghai, whatever. And, and I looked at her and my jaw dropped open because I said, but your accent is perfect. And she goes, oh, well, I kind of like California. So that's how I program myself to speak, but it was hilarious. Yeah.
Interesting. So, well, before we move to the next topic about the central bank digital currency, I want to just add one more thing about this social media thing. There were some reports saying that China kicked LinkedIn out of China's market.
Oh, yeah. Look, that's great. Thanks for bringing that up, David. I don't know how we got to the end of the segment and didn't talk to that. We should have spoke to that in the beginning, and I think I had intended to, but I lost it. But look, for anybody out there on LinkedIn who is going to hear this video on LinkedIn, I love you. I love all the people who I communicate with on LinkedIn. and I'm on it daily for many hours. It's my social media platform, and it's where I love to speak with people because we have a unique experience to have Chinese people talking directly with people from the West. It was the only place where you could do that. And the discussions that we had and continue to have till around the end of December are fantastic. All right. And sadly, LinkedIn is leaving China. Now, the important thing, if you do remember nothing else, it is that LinkedIn was not thrown out of China. It is true that Google and Facebook were not really thrown out, but they were blocked in China. They still have corporate offices here and still have R&D. Interestingly enough, they have AI R&D here in China. So they weren't thrown out, but their internet sites were blocked. LinkedIn was not blocked. It was not banned. Basically, LinkedIn had 50 million users in a country of 1.4 billion. It never took off. It is a great platform. I love it because it's long form, but it never localized itself and spoke to a Chinese audience. They just weren't into it. And after 7 years, they gave up. Now, one of the reasons that they gave up at this point was that for these new data privacy laws, they would have had to have invested money to basically retool their servers and the whole infrastructure that they run LinkedIn China on. And for them, it wasn't worth the investment. So I love LinkedIn. I'm very sad this is gone because we need communication between China and the US and the EU more now than ever, okay, to combat the constant drone of negative press coming out of mostly Washington. I'm sorry to say that.
Yeah, it is.
But,
it is good. Yeah, it's coming
so
out.
LinkedIn is gone. It wasn't thrown out. It was a business decision on LinkedIn's part, and I'm sad to see it go. We should all be sad, and not much we can do about it. We've got like another month left, and then the service gets shut down.
So it's purely a business decision on their part, on LinkedIn's part.
Yeah, as far as we can tell, look, the real problem for them is, look, I'm sure they had revenue here. I don't know. Nobody knows how much money LinkedIn makes in China. Really, it's they don't tell you. It's an unknown. But what we can see very clearly is that when you look at an internet platform in China and you say that you got 50 million Chinese users, that's nothing. I mean, you got to really think about the likes of Alipay with each individual may have several accounts. You're looking at close to 8 or 900 million users for a nationwide necessary service like payment. All right.
Yeah.
So 50 million is really nothing for China. And my bet, I can't confirm this by saying that somebody from LinkedIn told me or it was clearly illustrated, but it was not profitable enough for them to deal with the hassle of redoing their computers. But there's another thing, right? There's always one thing more. Microsoft, the owner of LinkedIn, was taking a lot of flack, getting serious complaints from US government. So you've got a real problem. You've got China on one side saying, LinkedIn, you got to pay all this money to update your servers and to do new computing so that you're in compliance with the law. On the other side, you have Microsoft, the parent of LinkedIn, being accused of being in collusion with the Chinese government. At the end of the day, if you were Microsoft and you weren't making heaps of money in China, you'd say this is just not worth the hassle anymore. And that's, and those are the two likely issues that pushed LinkedIn over the edge to leave China. A little bit of both.
Okay, well, good to know.
Yeah.
From a source there. So rather than what
Bitcoin
the
time.
media is reporting, yeah, rather than what the media is reporting about China kicked.
Well, maybe we've saved the best for last. Bitcoin.
Oh,
And
my
we've got a lot
favorite.
to say about it.
Your favorite topic.
Your favorite
Richard.
topic.
Yeah, there's nothing like living in a country with an absolute ban on Bitcoin. Right?
Well, we just
So-
yeah. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, so look, let's talk about Bitcoin and let's talk about China. Okay.
Mhm.
China has a long history with Bitcoin, but the important part that people want to know about right now
Mhm.
is China banned Bitcoin. And they
Right.
did, but they've always banned Bitcoin in certain ways. So let me explain. In China, since the end of the revolution, 1949, it has been the only currency that you're allowed to use in China is the RMB, which stands for renminbi, also known as the yuan. Okay, fine. So basically, the only currency, the money you're allowed to use to buy stuff is renminbi. You can't use dollars, you can't use euro, you can't use Bitcoin. That's it. There's one currency here. It's called the renminbi. We use that. End of story. Pretty basic.
Mhm.
Bitcoin came along and China was relatively open to it until around 2013. In fact, at around 2013, the major buyers of Bitcoin were Chinese, to the tune of like 80 or 90% of the Bitcoin market was to Chinese people who figured out that you could use Bitcoin to send money overseas, which is, of course, directly against the currency transfer laws in China. So, okay. The other thing that Chinese people saw in Bitcoin is, of course, investment. They saw that it's an asset. You can buy it, and it appreciates. Okay. But the concept that you're going to go to a store or a coffee shop in China and use Bitcoin to buy a coffee or anything isn't happening. There is no commercial use of Bitcoin in the payment system in China. And that's been so for a very, very long time. So China banned Bitcoin this September. It was the 13th move by which China tried to basically end the use of Bitcoin in the country. There were 13 different legislative moves before that last one that all tried to gradually reduce the amount of Bitcoin use. And to Bitcoin's credit, it's pretty hard to block. I mean, it's digital, and if you want to use it, it's hard to do away with it. So Bitcoin is out of China, and the most recent two blocks are important. And let's focus on them. 6 months ago, the Chinese government said, we have a problem. Bitcoin, we're cracking down on it, and we'd like to crack down on it, in part because we have electric consumption problems. The provinces had targets and quotas to meet for how much electricity they were not going to use, they were going to save. And Bitcoin mining is extremely electric intensive. All right. In fact, it used, by my calculations, around 1% of all the power generated in China at one point when it was at its peak.
Enormous.
Wow.
Yeah, and that's really important. People are like 1%. No. When you look at energy savings, you're looking at trying to save fractions of a percent. So a full percentage point of electric production is massive. So 6 months ago, China said, look, we are having electric problems. And the Bitcoin community basically said, we don't believe you. We think that's made up. And it's important to note that, about 5 months later, China has rolling brownouts in different cities. It has some, so, one of the issues that they stated 6 months ago happened to be a lot more truthful than many made it out to be. But then the most recent ban, which was in September, which really basically shut the Bitcoin market down, said that they were disallowing foreign exchanges to be able to process transactions from Chinese nationals. So if you were a Chinese national, you couldn't have a Bitcoin account in China, but you had it on a foreign exchange, right? And these exchanges allow you to transfer funds from Bitcoin, usually to what's called a stable coin, a dollar digital form of dollar. And then you took the digital form of dollar and you had some transfer agent here in China and you got renminbi out of it and you were done. That whole path from Bitcoin to renminbi has basically been shut down, taking many, many Bitcoin owners out of the market because you can't bring it in and turn it into RMB. There are, of course, always ways, but it made it difficult enough so that most people aren't going to be bothered. And that's sort of the big picture story of what happened with Bitcoin in China. And
that's very interesting. So where all this fits with the theme of the CBDC?
Sure, that's the best question of all. And look, anybody out there, again, if you remember nothing else, remember this. You will read in the newspaper every day the following comment. China is banning Bitcoin because it wants to promote the central bank digital currency, or the digital RMB. And you'll see that. I read it literally every day. It's a throwaway line that virtually every journalist uses. And the problem is there's no factual nature to this. There is no use for Bitcoin in retail or commercial transactions in China. There are only two uses of Bitcoin in China. And they are investment. You buy it because you think it's going to go up. And money laundering. You use it to get money out of the country. Now, that's the reality. Nobody buys anything with Bitcoin in China. Now, I'm sure a few people have bought stuff on the black market, but in general, you don't transact in Bitcoin in China. So the concept that banning Bitcoin will somehow lead to more people using digital RMB is nuts at face value, because taking away one does not increase the market for the other. They're unaffected because they're in completely different universes. So just one thing, speaking toward money laundering, I know I like Bitcoin in some ways, and if you're a Bitcoin fan out there, just bear with me for a second. But in 2020, there was an analysis showing that in calendar year 2019-20 through August, something like $50 billion had been moved out of China through digital currency.
Wow.
So if you want to understand why the Chinese government really doesn't like Bitcoin, you can look to power consumption. That's true. But the real reason is it's a currency money laundering tool. And to those who say, well, we don't like currency restrictions, they're not fair, people should have free money, you can't condone breaking the law. These are the laws of China. This is where 1.4 billion people live. That's a law that perhaps many people, particularly wealthy people, don't like. There's money restrictions. You can only get $50,000 out a year. But that still doesn't give the entire nation the right to suddenly switch over to Bitcoin and, move 50 billion out, right?
Right.
So you can see where the government had some real issues with Bitcoin in China, without question.
Well, that's very, very insightful. So, see, this is why it's nice having Richard, because he provides the insights we're not going to read anywhere else. I mean,
that's exactly right.
The newspaper's not going to, here in the US, the media outlets is not going to address this. Anything you want to add?
Richard, is there anything that you would like to share with our viewers that we haven't covered already?
Wow, it seems like an opportunity for me to say something profound. But
okay, the pressure's on.
But I'm not sure that I've got it. But for somebody who's listened to this far toward the end, we covered three very different topics, but I have a comment, hopefully a profound one. They're not different. They're all stitched together with this very concept that China is extremely technologically and digitally sophisticated. And in each case, whether we're talking about the digital privacy laws, if we're talking about LinkedIn and social media having to change its game because of these digital privacy laws, and if we're talking about Bitcoin or digital currency, we're all talking about technological advances that are beyond what is happening in the US and in the EU today. Now, somebody says, well, banning Bitcoin is not beyond the US. The US is superior for that. That may be true in some ways. But the reality is China is really looking to where digital is successful and where digital is failing. And for them, sorry enough, Bitcoin is a fail. But the point is, they are trying to really impact and change to make more success and less failure. And they're not willing to let the digital or the tech space run wild. And all of our topics are all stitched together with this thing, with this very concept that Chinese government isn't messing around when it comes to digital technology. They're going to the future, and the future is here in China today. And much of this you'll see in the US sometime years from now.
Well, I'm sure our viewers will find this info very, very, very insightful. And we will gonna have you back here on the show, Richard. So just
wow.
Count on it.
I'm honored, and look, I'm deeply honored, David and Ross, to be with such esteemed professionals as yourself. I'm honored to have met so many of your viewers who listen to you and trust what you have to say, because you have an important message that needs to get out. And I'm deeply honored that you have me on twice. And if you'd like to have me on again to talk about China and tech topics, I'd be delighted. And again, am honored to be here. So thank you very much.
We can't thank you enough. This has been such an engaging kind of conversation. Really appreciate you.
So for our viewer, Richard, who may be the first time watching this, where can they find you if they want to know more about you?
If you've listened this far, please contact me in two spots. It's really easy. I'm on Twitter with my name, Richard Turrin, and my best work. In fact, all of the topics today were covered on LinkedIn in the past months. I write every day very long articles on LinkedIn, and please connect with me or see what I write there. And if you disagree or you agree with me, please feel free to reach out. I'd love to hear from you. Look, the other thing that I have to say, because I'm an author, my book Cashless is available on Amazon. And if you're interested in the relationship between Bitcoin, cryptocurrency, and China's new central bank digital currency, and if you want to know how it's built and what it's going to do and how it is showing America what its digital cashless future will look like, please check out my book Cashless. So it's on Amazon, Apple, Kobo, a whole bunch of the digital stores, and of course on Amazon in paperback and hardcover.
And for our viewers, we will have the link. We will have the link for you at the bottom of the description, where you can check Richard's book and all his social media links and so forth. So, any final word?
Thank you again, Richard.
Okay.
And look forward to future conversation.
All right.
Thanks so much, David. Thank you so much, Ross.
Of course. And count on it, Richard. We will call on you again. So, for our viewers, we want to say, remember to check our membership on the geopoliticsinconflict.com. And as always, stay informed. Till next time. Bye-bye.